Welcome to the Instinctive Influencers podcast, a show where influence becomes one of your tools for success. Now, here are your hosts, Brian Weber and Ed Haley.
Hi, I'm Ed. No, I'm not Ed. Hi, I'm Brian.
And I am Ed. It was switcheroo. I am Ed.
This is the Instinctive Influencers podcast.
Oh, boy.
Well, I wanted to know what it felt like from your perspective, you know, like if I announce myself as Ed, do I feel that greatness coming out, you know? So we're going to talk about later perspective. So I just wanted to see what it felt like to be Ed.
I thought you were just working on some material for our blooper reels. Now that we're doing video.
Now that we're doing video, it's totally different. And hey, Ed, I'll tell you what, man, we are killing it in the video area. Like we're doubling our just audio noise. That's what it is. It's just noise in the background for people. But we're getting double the number of listeners and we're getting to double the number of viewers on YouTube to the listeners on all the other platforms. Insane.
I mean, I usually put it on when I'm working out, like doing the elliptical or riding the bike. I can put it on and watch the indoor bike, not my street bike. I usually throw it on there myself. I don't know. It's something, it's just different and it's more enjoyable in the video.
It is. You see the characters come to life because that's what I like to think of as just character. No, we're actually real people. I could just see you now. You said only the indoor. I'm like, yeah, just watch it on your bike while you're riding down the street. Don't get hit by a car.
Yeah, no. Here in Germany, they're very not cautious. So yeah, I can't watch it. I'm afraid to change a song when I ride my bike here.
Yeah, no, I totally get you there. That's why. So I ended up. Michelle bought me a gift. Because I never feel safe with the earbuds or anything in, unless it's like a closed path. And like in Korea, we had closed paths, loved it. But she got me those Bose Glasses. Have you ever seen those?
Yes. Yeah.
Those things are amazing. Like
yeah.
you still hear everything around you. And it sends the sound in just right. So I'm not completely distracted by the sound. And I don't have to, I hear a car coming up behind me, and it's definitely the way to go. And I think they're going to come out with a sportier version, which would be even better.
Yeah, it would be. I wanted some and then I ended up getting earbuds instead, Bose, but the noise canceling is unreal. And I definitely could not wear them on a bike. I have them with me all the time, but I would not ride the bike with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just as well as I do. I mean, there's been the times where you don't have it, you're not listening to anything, and something comes up behind from you, and it'll scare the what out of you. So.
Oh yeah, because your mind, you're thinking about something else.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, so how's life, man? You doing all right?
Yeah, been a good week. I did some Army things that I haven't done in a while. I sat on a promotion board. Trying to help some young soldiers, get them ready for the next step. So I hadn't done that in a while. Actually, so a soldier comes in, Brian, and they come in, they're super nervous, right? And they're like doing this, and they're like, oh. And I said, hey, specialist, we'll say Schmugatelli, you nervous? And the specialist goes, yeah, yes, Master Sergeant. I said, me too. I haven't done this in like 3 years. I'm nervous too. So if you would calm down, I'll calm down, and we can get through this together. And the board members laughed, but guess what the soldier did? The soldier laughed and relaxed just a little. Let down. You could see the shoulders come down a little bit. And that was what I was after, right? I was after getting them to relax a little. Instead, we always say, oh, just relax. Just relax. But that doesn't relax you like a laugh does or,
No. Yeah. Did I ever tell you what happened to me on my first promotion board ever in 2000?
Did you pass
out?
It was
2000. No, it's 2001. I did.
Yeah.
Right in the chair. Got the
No,
black.
you
I got
didn't.
the black tunnel. Where you're
Yeah.
staring at somebody in front of you. Yes, I did. Um, It was in South Korea. I was at Camp Humphreys. It was a small post back then, and I think I'm fine and everything. And I'm sitting down, and I was thinking, I'm like, why is everything like zooming in? And this is the first time I ever had this happen to me. And everything came in to like a little tiny circle. And then I woke up with the sergeant major like tapping me on the face, asking me if I was okay. And so
Wow.
he gets me awake. Yeah. Yeah. Gets me awake. He says, all right, I need you to go to the hallway, put some water in your face, calm down, and then come back in. So when I come back in, they're all kind of like staring at me and stuff. And yeah, it was the scariest thing ever. But when people say you pass out, I never had it happen. So I was like, whatever, it's nothing. No, I got that nervous. I passed out, bro. So yeah. So for all those guys out there and gals in the Army that have worked with me before or sat on a board that I was a part of, yes, I passed out at my very first board because I was so nervous. So hey, it happens.
It happens. Yeah, that's incredible. I don't even know how I guessed that. Like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are nerve-wracking.
Absolutely.
I mean, but they also help develop that leader in you, right? You got to go through those experiences to be able to learn from them and become better. The reason I knew that making that soldier laugh works is because I wish somebody had done that when I had to do a promotion board. So it does help. It's all part of that development in you as a senior leader. That moment in your life, it had enough impact. It had a second and third order effect on the rest of your career. You never forgot it. So, I mean, here we are 20 years later, and you still think about that moment as if you were there.
Oh yeah, and I try to put myself in the soldier side of things, and I think we're going to talk about the perspective thing. So I'll add that to later. Before we get into our major topic, Ed, good news stories because we want to start bringing these in. We had our last guest was Thomas Bramer. This coming up in not just a few days, I want to say, is his actual ceremony for retirement. He's going to have a bunch of family in up there at Colorado and stuff. So I want to say congratulations to him and thank you for your service for all those years. And I can't wait to see what the next chapter does for him. They're going to be moving back to Ohio. So that's, that's quite a ways from here, but I wish him the best. So, good news story, to see a good leader who I would tell you, I didn't say this stuff so much when we were sitting there together because you always kind of like you rethink about things like, oh, hey, we talked about this, we talked about that. But like literally sitting there and saying, thank you to him for what he kind of did for me in a short period of time. When I say short period of time, I used to call them my McMahon crew. So our street name was McMahon. And our crew, we had this old group of people. We always hung out together, did stuff. But he would come over to my garage, and I had whiteboards up in the garage for like working out and stuff. And we'd race everything on there. And he mapped out all kinds of stuff for me to help me like learn and to understand things. And he didn't have to do that. He took he wanted to take his time about things and teach me a few things. And I was like a sponge soaking it in. And I was grateful for that. But what was even better to me, Ed, than anything, when I was away and my family was still there, everybody in that group, it's kind of like they put their arms around my family and they were there for them when they needed it. And that's like family stuff. That's typical Army stuff to us. But there's those people who are probably out there who are civilians and they're like, oh yeah, I just reach out to my family. Well, that's not how we do it. We take care of our own. And that was something I was grateful for. So I just want to say that to me, that's this week's good news story is, to see a good friend and mentor getting to move on to the next chapter of his life and with his family. And it was great having him here. So I want to say, hey, congratulations and keep on going for that guy.
Yeah. Congratulations, Tom. Thanks for doing the interview. I thought that the video on YouTube turned out very well. I was impressed with it. I mean, I found myself, Brian, for the first little bit, smiling, watching this video, laughing. And I thought it was pretty good. I thought the camaraderie and, I thought it came across pretty well. So, yeah, thanks, Tom, and congratulations. Job well done. Obviously, you made it to retirement and on to the next thing, whatever that is.
That next thing. Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of next things, the next thing we need to go over is this week's topic. And if anybody remembers last week, what I said is we're connecting some dots here, and we're going to link some different shows together to kind of, make it like be a learning lesson. Last week, we talked a little bit about leadership philosophy with him. Mm-hmm. Well, one of those things that we may have to learn how to do before we can come up with leadership philosophy is to define leadership or define our own leadership. And that's where we did some research, found a great article. The article actually is we're going to take notes from the article. Ed wanted to teach from his whiteboard, he told me earlier. However, he's not ready for that type of setup yet. He's not ready to go back to the classroom, which I think would be a great thing. Get him in there like he's in a classroom and start. Yeah. Then I can just shut up and listen.
Well, I gotta move the office around.
Go ahead.
I gotta modify how the office is laid out a little bit, and then my wife's got to finish her Lego over here in the corner, and then we'll be able to move the bookcase and stuff around. And I think that is kind of the plan. I'm gonna move my desk so it's across from the whiteboard, so I can do a desk show here, and then the next week's flip the camera and do the whiteboard show. And I think that'll. And then they'll get to see my fancy Batman painting. It hangs over my door as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's funny that you say that. You say that. I've already been messed. Like I bought a tripod for the camera that gets really tall, and I've already messed with some like different scenarios of like if I wanted to do it from the whiteboard or if I want to do it where I'm sitting on the couch again, and it's just different angles. And I'm just looking at different ways to go about it. So yeah, I'm on the same track as you, buddy. We didn't even discuss this, but we're thinking about this. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, so let's talk about this article that we found. The article is actually, the title is called 6 Questions to Define Leadership. And it was written by a C. Miller. I don't know what C stands for those of you out there. But it was actually, so originally we found it from the Green Notebook, which is something that Ed and I have talked about multiple times. We found a lot of good information for. So those of you out there, if you want to go check out, just type in Google from the Green Notebook, and that website will come up. Tons of articles, great stuff that is both military related and civilian related, primarily military. All right. So we can look at some history on this down the road and talk about the individual who started it. Who's still serving, I'm pretty sure. However, C. Miller was a civil affairs officer pursuing a master's degree in international economics and strategic studies at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. He also holds a master's degree in project management from Western Carolina University. Was previously assigned to a civil affairs organization. I'm not going to name it off or anything like that. And is deployed multiple times. So this is somebody, it seems to me, Ed, just reading the little bio that I got from the article, this is somebody with experience. This is somebody who's been tested through different instances. And I think that's why I was kind of happy when I started reading the article and I saw the different questions and how to kind of look at things. That I was satisfied with that. What your initial thoughts, bud?
Yeah, I thought the article was pretty interesting, and then I read it twice. I read it once, through one time, which also I think we're going to talk about a little bit about that, the importance of that. I read it for reading it, then I read it for understanding it, and then I skimmed it to make notes on it. So, my only regret is, I talked about that going back to that promotion board, and I sat on the promotion board with a peer who is civil affairs. So it would have been nice to have kind of, maybe I could have had some discussion with him on some of these topics, from his perspective and get some more information that I could have used. But I think that we both have enough knowledge in these areas. I think some of it really feeds into us as leaders, that it should be an interesting discussion today.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, and that's, I think about this article and I look at all these 6 questions or 6 lessons learned. And I would say, Ed, I feel like we've hit all these topics before, but we've never crunched them all together. And that's what I kind of liked about this. So,
yes. Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead. I want to start it right off the bat, Ed. I wanted to read this first paragraph from because I thought it was, to me, it had meaning. It had a lot of depth that we could actually discuss upon. All right. The best lessons in life often come from repetition, several emotional events, and failures. It's why we train to reinforce skills and create situations that are hopefully worse than anything encountered in real life. See that right there? That part right there, Ed, it makes me think about the whole train as you fight mentality. You know, make sure that our training is so tough. What's that?
Which is actually something that you and I are very deeply, it's ingrained in us, like early in our career, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's an additional component to these lessons, that maturity to intellectual interrogate the events and extract critical information that frames the knowledge for future decisions. The best mentors try to pass this information on in an effort to help the next generation avoid learning these same difficult lessons the hard way. Unfortunately, while well-intentioned, the lack of emotional connection and perspective often fails to resonate, and individuals end up repeating the mistakes anyway. These secondhand lessons tend to teach people what to think rather than how to think. I thought about that. I thought about lessons learned. I thought about AARs. I thought about all these different things when I was reading that, Ed. And to me, it was just like, how many times has somebody said to me, you may not want to do that because this is going to be the results. And in my mind, I reply back with, even sometimes verbally, oh, no, I think it'll be different this time. Right. And I make the same mistakes as somebody tried to warn me. And, one of the things that Rick used to tell us, he used to say that when we were working at the academy, that it's a wagon wheel. You started at one spot and try to make these changes, try to do these things, but it always comes back down to that same spot again.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, so when I read this part, I think of our children, right? Because we tell them,
oh, yes,
based off of your life experiences, don't do this. This isn't, do this, apply for college at this point when you're in high school. But then they still want to like carve their own niche out. I want my own path. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, I told you the stove was hot. If you continue to touch the stove, then you have to touch the stove and learn for yourself. But I told you the thing was hot. So really, this one really took me away from the military, away from that part, and just made me think about your leadership as a parent and the impact of that and how that plays into, I'm trying to show you a better way. But we also have to understand when they don't want that better way to just let them learn on their own, and then let them come back and say, you were right. Actually, my kids would never say that.
Yours and mine both, my friend. I think our youngest one, she can be the most stubborn. She's very inquisitive. She loves to discover things on her own. More so, like, I feel like it's like a little mini version of me in there because she's so hard headed.
So one looks like you and one acts like you. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's what did I do? What did I do?
Because Ethan looks like you were washed in hot water. So
so it shrunk.
Yeah,
I got that. Yeah, I got you.
Michelle shrunk
he's something else. Yeah, thank goodness the other one looks more like my wife and not me. Then poor girl. She did. All right, Ed. We'll jump into our 6 little areas. Do you want to kind of start us off with this very first one?
Yeah. So Brian, the first one is, it's all about perspective. And there's a lot of things about perspective. I mean, oh man, I hate that phrase. But my perception, my reality, those type of things. But so when we talk about here, what we're talking about is understanding the perspective of the other people, of our junior soldiers. What is it? Why? John Rogers, peel back the onion. Why is that the action that they took? What led them to think that was the route? Like, what was that like? And that's really what it's, when you talk about perspective, that's what we're talking about, Brian.
Yes. I would definitely say, so with this, in this article, I loved what the author put here. I want to say it was like the third or fourth sentence. Is, when is the last time you asked yourself, what is the other person's perspective? Mm-hmm. When a soldier gets labeled as a troublesome, most leaders want to cut them loose and move on because that's the easy course of action. One I am guilty of employing, myself also. Or when a leader makes a seemingly rash decision, the easy response is to criticize it as being foolish. So with that perspective thing, putting yourself in their shoes, having empathy, so to speak, but not feeling bad for them, that to me, that's a big part of the whole leadership, helps you understand your subordinates or those who are with you, understanding, what they're going through. You remember this, Ed. I remember being a private or a specialist and money being a problem. What's getting paid this month? Is it going to be electric bills? Or going to be food? Well, we've got to have food, so maybe the electric bill will be late, and we only have so much gas, so much money afforded towards gas. So how much we drive the vehicle? To me, that plays into the leadership thing of, well, do I really want Joe driving all over X, Y, and Z, or can we help them out as seniors and say, hey, how about I drive and we'll go together and stuff? Not just to be there to monitor and help them, but also to save them from those all those pains that they may end up having. You've probably have dealt with the exact same thing with the whole, well, this kid's a problem, and instead of washing him off, I know, knowing you, Ed, you probably went in even harder than before to help them.
I mean, you have to understand, the soldiers and then the soldier's perspective or the subordinate. But one of the things that's said in the article is said, remove yourself. So you're removing yourself from the situation and you're red teaming it. And then that can lead to better solutions. So it's basically saying you have to take yourself away. I know he's my soldier. I know he's, troublesome, but let me move back and look at it from a different angle and see. And then when you start figuring those things out, the why behind it, it can help you to be like, okay, well, this is how I can help him to fix that thing. Now, I have had soldiers that were reassigned, which we're going to talk about, but I got there right after he was reassigned. And I mean, this soldier's like, I hate the Army. I hate this. I hate NCOs. But then he got into a situation where he worked with myself and our at the time, Motor Sergeant. And so he's waiting to pin Master Sergeant right now, that PFC that wanted out the Army so bad. He's currently waiting to pin Master Sergeant. So, he flipped it because you took him at that point when we talk about reassign later, the reassign was the solution for him. And you gave him a fresh start, and we knew, because they come with their packet, right? So we know what their issues were, but it's about you as the leader looking at it from a different perspective. I know what leadership problems you had over here, but those weren't with me. Let's see how you respond to my leadership. Let's take it a different look at a different perspective of the situation. And now, like I said, this guy's getting ready to make Master Sergeant. That was he was a PFC in 2008. So here we are 13 years later from PFC to Master Sergeant, waiting to pin. So
13 years. Wow.
13 years.
That's fast.
Yeah.
That's fast track. That's somebody who, once they realized that they liked it, they put their, whoever that is, and I'll have to talk to you after because I really want to find out. But that's somebody who put their face to it and went after it.
Yeah, I mean, he did the things people, again, we also, as NCOs and leaders, we know the best way to succeed as a leader in the military is to do the jobs other people don't want. So he was a recruiter in like
Yes.
Delaware, like not the hotbed of recruiting.
Ooh.
He went to Rock Island and worked with all mostly civilians and a handful of green suiters. So he took the challenging assignments to help himself progress quicker, because he's after that. I mean, he was a first time go every time for getting promoted. So yeah, so there's those things.
So,
but there. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I wanted to ask you. So, how do you think you went through the whole perspective piece that we're talking about right now to help you lead that soldier, or was it just more like an instinct thing? I mean, what do you think helped you kind of transition to help that guy or gal?
So one of the things is the soldier came from maybe a not great community, and when he grew up, and so I came from a community that was not great either, and I think that shared kind of, although one was East Coast, one was West Coast, but still very similar kind of experiences growing up helped. And then leadership capital. The soldier's wife had a complicated pregnancy, and I was at the hospital with the soldier when he wanted to fight the nurse because she gave the baby a shot that woke the baby up when they're peacefully sleeping. Like, going through those things, the soldier loses a sibling to violence in the streets, and the soldier wants to immediately go back home and take care of it and make him see, like, you have a family now. And so putting that time and investing in the soldier, absolutely. Leadership capital, which again, we kind of talk about today. I think that was how I ended up leading that soldier. And like I said, I looked at his file for Sergeant First Class. I looked at his file for Master Sergeant. He still, every once in a while, I get emails from him, and he still reaches out to me all these years. Like, I separated from him in 2011, I think. We went our separate ways, but I still communicate with him and his wife. I say regular, Army regular, so every few months. But yeah, so that's what it was. And you do have to look at it from a different angle, like. But in the article, Brian, it gives us some tools that should help fix some issues. And so the first one it talks about is resupply, and I'm a logistics guy, so it's basically saying, do they have the tools that they need? Do they have what they need, or is that what's causing whatever the issue is? And I think it's more than pens and paper and physical tools, but do they have the tools they need to be successful? Do they have, maybe their upbringing, maybe they don't have those decision-making processes to develop a course of action for what they want to do. So I think it's a little more deep than simply, do they have what they need? Yeah, they got a paper. Yeah, they're good. You know what I mean? So I think that when you're looking at putting it in perspective, that's part of it. Is, do they have the mental tools? I guess, is it mental? I guess kind of mental, but do they have the experiential learning process? Have they gone through that to learn to deal with this scenario? Because you talked about finances before.
And you killing me. You killing. I was gonna bring that up, and then you bring it up. I'm like, come on, guy. Like, you're stealing all my. No, keep going. Preach, brother. Keep going.
So you talked about finance earlier, right? But does that soldier have the knowledge of how to manage their finance? That's a tool, and I think that's part of putting it in perspective. Like, instead of hammering that soldier for not paying their bills, let's look at why they're not paying their bills. Well, the soldier doesn't know how to balance, his bank account. Back in our day, a checkbook. That's a tool. So we can sit down and get that for them. We can get from another agency. We can provide it something. So that's the first one, Brian. You want to take the second one?
I will, but I wanted to hit upon what you said. You said balancing the checkbook and stuff like that. That's a tool. I had that. No one taught me how to do that stuff before I joined the Army. It was my first squad leader after I'd already bounced a check and gotten in trouble for bouncing a check that I learned those life skills. So it's, and he didn't look down upon me. He said, "You don't know how to do this? Let me teach you." And that's what felt good. So yeah, definitely, the resupply. I like that. The very next one was about retrain. And it's basically, does the soldier need more training to be successful. I used to have a first sergeant that when I was recruiting, I don't know how to relate it. So, well, I do know how to relate it. So he used to say all the time, there's normally two reasons why a soldier wouldn't be able to get something done. And he used to say it's either training or discipline. Either they don't have the discipline to do it because they already know how, or they haven't been trained. And he said, we can fix both. Yeah. Now, do I agree? I don't agree completely, because sometimes I think there's also, there may be other underlying things there. But to me, retraining, that's a huge piece. I mean, when you and I, we taught together. If we had a failure that failed a test at our academy, any type of test, those students went through a retraining, and we would spend the hours need to. I mean, the most prominent retraining we did, just as well as I do, was the land nav.
Especially
land nav was the most. That was. We never had to retrain my platoon. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. No, yeah, but that was. I mean, and like Sarah, she's going to listen. We talked about her earlier. I know she'll listen. She's going to relate to that. She'll remember. Oh yeah, that was like the one thing we constantly retrained.
Yeah,
and. Was it because they didn't relate enough to the training the first time that they didn't get it, and then somebody else trained them? So it could be a different of training styles. It could be a different type of learning to being done. It can be, I mean, there's just so many factors in there. And often, Ed, when you think about it, that retraining we would do, normally our success rate was very high in a second time pass, right?
Yeah.
They tend to pass. I mean, there was very few times we lost students after a retrain took place. So I think retraining is definitely another key indicator that we have to look at when we look at their perspective type thing, Ed.
I think retraining too, Brian, the way we did, I think you had to have an ego thing. Because I know at least in the platoons I was in, generally the person conducting the retrain was not the person that conducted the original training. So maybe Brian just didn't reach that soldier, that student, but maybe Schmugatelli can reach them. So it helps to have Schmugatelli conduct the retrain, because if I have Brian conduct the retrain and he conducted the original training, I didn't change that much, right? So there's a dynamic there. So retrain. I mean, the range. What's the first thing you do if you can't qualify the range? You report to retraining.
Go to retrain.
Yeah, you go to retraining. Yep. So and I think it's more too. Like I do think retraining is important. I think it's a good way to overcome some issues. And it does put some things in perspective, Brian. This next one.
Yes, definitely.
Let's talk about the next one. The next one is refit.
Ooh.
So refit. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, refit. So this one we're talking about. This is talking about looking at your team and are there responsibilities that could be shared to increase the focus. So we talked about this week, right? Promotion board. We talked about a soldier with a lot of tasks within his office. And those tasks what they've done is they've bogged the soldier down to the point where now he's not conducting things that's expected of his grade or his position because he's so focused on this. But if you have a big enough team, you can maybe take something off of his plate, put it on another plate and say, here, this is your thing now. Or, the other thing you can do is what that does is now this guy that I gave this new task to, now he's going to build some confidence when he executes it, right? And now I'm building more leadership capital, and then I could take something else off his plate. But the important part to me, let's make sure this guy over here doesn't think we're taking it away from him because he's not doing a good job. Let him know we're taking it away because I need you to be more focused on over here. And these two things I can give to somebody else to help you do that and accomplish that mission. I mean, if you got 6 soldiers, I can take some things off of you. So I need you to focus on those 6 soldiers too. So that's where we get our refit. And I wrote a note that I can't quite see. Anyway. So that's refit, Brian. Refit is just kind of sharing the wealth if you can, taking some stuff off the soldier. And it may be you. Maybe you as the leader looking at it and putting
Yes.
things in perspective. Maybe it's about you saying, you know what, that is something I should be doing anyway. Let me take that away from him or her and let them focus on their own, because we do. But and then you're also building you're building the future. You're teaching
Yes.
that specialist some responsibility. When you give this guy over here some of the other guy's stuff, now you're teaching him some responsibility, and you're teaching him, to manage things, and you're building him to become the NCO to replace this guy over here. Nice shorts.
Absolutely.
Those safety
So
cones,
something I
Marge.
read, you like my shorts? Then yeah. It's so my wife can see me coming from a long ways away. She doesn't lose me in stores anymore. So one of the things that this card used to be up behind my desk. I kept all these cards. I don't know if you remember the different cards. I had 4 of them. I used to have them up behind my desk there at the academy. And when I was reading through what you just said about the refit, and it says increase focus and build confidence in primary tasks. This, to me, is competence and confidence, and it's constantly rotating. We create competence in our individuals through the confidence we build in them and what they understand. And I found that this, let's just say, for the instance, our podcasting, right? Our ability to do this. When we started off doing this, we were horrible. I mean, like the production wise, the conversations were good. I was definitely. But after I learned new things and I learned how to do certain stuff, I felt more confident in it. And I mean, now we've moved from, this episode 82. If you take and compare this to episode 2, you'd be like, oh my goodness, they have updated. I mean, we got video now. We there's just all the different things. But what happened is over time, the competence was built through confidence and then just repetition. And that's definitely what I was thinking about. Hey, do me a favor too. Just look at the note that I just sent you, Ed, in the chat as we continue on. Let's see. The next one. So they can't see what we typed to each other. So number 4 is reassign. Is there an organizational issue that is impending a soldier's performance, and would they do better in a different unit? So that's one of those things that I'm not always on board with. Just moving people around. I'd rather help them get through the problem. But if I do believe that if they just can't overcome, then you have to move on. I mean, and you see this, Ed. You see this with people. Those are they start in one MOS, right? And they go to the AIT, basically advanced individual training of whatever the job is, and they just don't grasp on to the concepts. Maybe they reclass to another one that they understand a little bit better. Because, I mean, I hate to say it, but recruiters don't always get it right by putting them in the right job, and people just are not good at what they end up taking, or they just don't. It doesn't fit their type of personality. And to me, reassigning people, I'm always cautious about that. One of the things. So Josh Bryan, my mentor, I talk about him a lot. And when I first got a hold of him, we talked, I was coming out of Korea and I was getting ready to go to Carson. And originally I was supposed to go to his battalion. And he asked me, he said, hey, what company do you want? I literally replied back, give me your worst. And it's because it's like, I know how to relate, that perspective thing. Right. I don't reassign people out of that. Let's grow that from within, because I think you can take the worst and become the best over time. It's just one of those ideas. Reassign. What do you think about reassigning, man?
Well, so the big thing from the article, and this is why most of us as senior leaders, we have a problem with it, right? Is it is not a tool to dump your problem child on somebody else's porch. It is not. That's not the reassign. No. This kid is just, he can't do anything with him. He's always in trouble. I'm going to make him first on Weber's problem. That's not how that works, right? You have to use this as a
No.
tool. You can use it as a tool. So in my soldier's case, the one I was talking about, there was a later revealed conflict between him and the first sergeant. And the other problem was his wife, future wife, was in the same unit. So what happens is the first sergeant snaps on the wife, right? Starts screaming at the wife, the future wife. The soldier reacts. And then from that day forward, he's a moving target for this first sergeant who was not a good person either. And it comes out later. It comes out much later.
Right.
But you have to separate that. I mean, I had a first sergeant for that very reason. If you married somebody in his formation and you were in his formation, one of you were going to get reassigned, period. Because he wasn't going to let you stay there to cause that kind of a conflict. If in the engineer world, it was very easy, and we were the only battalion there. It was easy to move them around like that. But you can't just willy-nilly say, well, can't get right, can't do nothing with them, give them to somebody else.
Hey, let's jump into the opinion thing here, or experiences. So from my experiences, and I'm curious to hear what yours are, I don't have anything against people who are married in the same organization. I just prefer it not be. So my last organization, there's a few different married couples there. And the reason I say that is I feel like, well, what if they have children? What if they have this? What if they do that? And we have to go and do something. Now both of them have to uproot everything, and it's just, I don't disagree with people being married in the same place, because people can be married at any type of organization, civilian or whatever, in order to stay place. It tends to create more conflict than help in most cases. Not always though, because I can tell you also, I actually went out of my way to bring somebody's spouse to my organization because of an issue that was taking place at another organization. And to me, I think it helped. And that individual was just growing exponentially once they got to our organization. And I was very happy to see that. So what are your, because I don't want to, I'm not here to like influence people on to do it or not to do it, because you have to play it by ear. What do you think?
You have to play by ear, and you have to gain that experience to form what your opinion is of it. I mean, for me, I thought that it made sense to the point where you eliminate any possibility of that conflict. You eliminate that they might not be on the same kind of rotational basis going places, but within the engineer, like when my first sergeant, he did it, is he just moved them to the next company over. So they were still going to be on the same patterns and routines. And then there's some level of, if you got married and you're already in the formation together, well, you knew what the ripple effect of that could be. You knew that it meant we could both deploy. You knew, those different things. So,
yes.
But then, I've seen it go terribly wrong when you don't move them, and we won't get too in depth into that. But I think that it does make sense if you can afford to move them. Go ahead and move them, as long as you're not hurting somebody's career. As long as I'm not taking this staff sergeant who's in a staff sergeant position and putting them in a sergeant position for the sake of moving them. I don't want to hurt somebody's potential for promotions. But if I can move them from wherever they're at to a lateral position in another unit, then you can move them. It's easy. And have those discussions with them. Let them be part of that discussion before you make that decision. So, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying I'm against it or I am for it. Either way, it's just one of those things that you play over time. So, Ed, we're going to hit to the very next one. It says release.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one either.
What you got?
So this is really, and it very much stresses in the article, final option. Do not take this action lightly. Only use this action after you have already worked through the first 4 that we talked about. And because really, in our world, you're ending a career. Like, this is what we're talking about here, right?
Yes.
But to me, I look at it a little bit different, Brian. We've talked about many times that one of our favorite podcasts is Team Never Quit, right? This is quitting.
Yes.
To me, as an NCO, and this is just me, this is you saying, I can't, I quit, they got to go. Now, there are cases, right? if the soldier is 10% over their body fat and they are not improving, then and you've tried all the steps, at some point we got to, as we say, cut sling load, and they've got to go home. So we do have
or a failed urinalysis. A failed urinalysis.
So
that's
there
another
are situations, but like general good order and discipline kind of stuff, like late to formations, a soldier should never be chaptered if they're late to work. I've seen them, but why? Let's figure out how we can fix. There's got to be something else. I mean, if you get to this point, like I said,
there's an underlying problem.
Yeah, you've not only quit on your leadership, you've quit on that soldier too, and I think that's why this is one. It goes very much hand in hand with reassign, as these are like options way down. I have tried a lot. I have got with Brian and said, look, man, I cannot figure this out. Can you help me? Or whoever your mentor is, can you help me? Can you help me figure this out? How to handle this? I want to help this soldier. And then when it works out and you didn't release them, leadership capital, my friend, you helped them save their career. So, this is just way down the totem pole for me.
Absolutely. Well, I have to throw the note though, because he did put a note in. And I think he could have asterisked both 4 and 5. He said reassign and then and release. He put an asterisk beside reassign, but I think also affects the release. But it says be careful not to use this tool as a way to dump a problem on someone else. Good leadership means that the issues and reassignment are explained clearly to the soldier, and an integration plan for the new assignment is thoroughly developed before execution. You said it perfectly. Don't dump your problems on someone else. And I totally agree with it. I like that idea of that first question. So, and we're going through this as 6 questions, was what is the other person's perspective? So you can help define your leadership by looking at the other person's perspective. It helps you grow as a leader. I think if you go into lesson 2 though, Ed, this is something we preach all the time or talk about all the time. Lesson 2, lesson 2 is you can and should learn something from everyone. Everyone has encountered a variety of leadership styles and likely experienced a spectrum ranging from transformational to toxic. One of the questions you can ask is basically, what have I learned from my leaders? It's the, as you say, lifelong learning portion of leadership. It's taking those nuggets of leadership that you liked and disliked to build your own. All too often, what are people doing? They're not sitting there thinking about and reflecting upon their style of leadership, right? A lot of times when you're a junior, and I hope we have plenty of juniors that are listening, a lot of times as a junior, you're just going day by day, and you're not really thinking about, hey, this is how I lead, or this is how I don't lead, things like that. Lost you there, Ed. You okay, buddy?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. My man's back. All right. Yeah. But that's just like one of those things that I think about. Is like, I don't think I became, I guess I didn't look back at different types of leaders so much until I'd say I was a staff sergeant. And then I started really evaluating it. Instead, I just reacted as a sergeant, as an NCO, as a leader before that. What's yourself?
I had some challenges early, and so it's difficult. So remember, I was in the military, and then I got out the military. So when I came back in, I mean, I looked at things a little bit differently. So I mean, I had a sergeant first class as a specialist. I was like, I will not be this guy. So I was already examining, poor examples of leadership as a specialist, even as a PFC, because I had that experience of the first 4 years of my career being in before, you know what I mean? So it was a little different. I did start a little early, but to this day, I have not violated what my issue was with that guy. I am not a yeller, just not who I am. So, but I put a real big note here on my whiteboard about lesson 2, and it's check your ego. Because you have to be willing to say, I can learn something from that specialist or even that PFC. I can learn something. I don't know it all.
Yes.
So I think that that's very important to understand that. And it goes right into your ego. Like, let your ego, let it go. Realize, and then one of the things that he says in the article that really stood out for me, Brian, I really liked, he said, just because you're in charge doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room or the SME or a subject matter expert.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be. You just have to know who people who are smart in certain areas and call upon them and their experiences to help you.
Yeah. And actually, my current OIC is very much like that. She understands, like, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but I need to know who the smartest person is so that I can get the help or direction that I need for whatever the scenario is. And that is important. And that's checking your ego as well to understand that. Just because, Brian, you walk in the room and you're the only person with over 20 years experience, that doesn't mean you're the smartest person in that room. It just doesn't. You could be. But it doesn't mean you are. Just because, you come in and you've got a master's, a nice fresh master's and 20 plus years, could be somebody else. So that's important to understand. I mean, look at the thing about the ninja, right? You walk in and you see him as a civilian, but you go in there as a sergeant first class, you think, well, I know Army. But you don't know his background, right? You're not looking at it from his lens. And now this guy might be the smartest guy in the room, not you. And you say, well, yeah, but his job is to teach instructors. So, yeah, he's smarter than me in that. But he may be smarter than you in military. You just don't know where he came from. And he was very close hold on his background. And maybe that was part of the reason is be close hold. They don't know who I am, really. So, and then that led him to his evaluation. And you know how he was about stuff about evaluating people.
Yes. I'm glad you brought him up. And we haven't done it, and there's a reason why I'm not doing any of those commercials right now because I've got a few commercials planned, and stored for the Bearded Ninja and the Bearded Ninja products. There's a whole line of things going on. Lifelong learning industries. They're just they're throwing ideas left and right. But what you brought up was perfect because when you said people didn't know his background. You didn't. He was not forthcoming of his background.
No,
it's like something you learned over time through somebody said this, and then you go and ask him and say, "Hey, did you really do that?" He's like, "Yeah, I did." Like, why didn't you tell us? That wasn't important at the time, And it's funny because when you looked at the beard, if you look at him, and we've posted pictures. I mean, I've got a beard. I should wear it one day during the show. A Bearded Ninja fan club shirt that I had made up. But when you think about it, the way he came across or the way just he presented himself, you thought, I literally thought the first time I met him, Ed, very first time, I thought, man, this guy must have been like a professor at a university or something, like that's what I got from him, right? The way he knew how to enunciate and talk and the vest and the cool beard and just how he did things. And I was thinking, there's no way that this guy, once I found out the story, I was like, no way. And then I want to say it was E-Step. It was Steve. Oh, was it not Steve? No. Was it
Danny?
No, it was E-Step. It was Danny. Yeah. I know another E-Step named Steve. But Danny, he's like, oh, I remember I ran into him when he was this rank in Hawaii. Yeah, he was way different then. And I was like, oh, this is all real. Okay, but I find it, and that's that whole, don't judge a book by its cover and all that. However, that's one of the things I gathered from him is the whole using other people around you. And you said just because you're in charge doesn't make you the smartest person in the room or the subject matter expert. The next one I thought was really good was the quickest way to alienate your subordinates is to treat them as though they don't have a voice. I think everyone had a voice in Rick's classroom, always. And whether it be an instructor, whether it be a student, anybody that came in, they had a voice. And I think what it did was it created a conducive learning environment that we wanted. We were doing exponential learning before we were doing exponential learning because we were learning from one another. And that's so as a leader, to try to define your leadership, we said these are the 6 questions you should ask yourself. As a leader, you really do have to kind of like look at it and say, what have I learned from leaders, good and bad? What did I learn from them to be able to say, okay, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And when you brought up, you said sometimes we can learn from our subordinates. I think you should never eliminate that. Once you eliminate that, you stopped growing, because that's the newer generation. That's the newer generation that's bringing in new techniques, new types, new communication styles, all these different things that you've got to work your way through. How we communicate today, Ed, is not how you and I communicated 20 years ago to soldiers. It's different. It's completely different. And I'm not saying it's different for the bad or for the good. It's just a different way of communicating because it's a different generational thought process. We have soldiers literally in our ranks right now who were not born when 9/11 took place. So they didn't experience that, but they've grown up. They join knowing that they are a part of a service that's going to war or going to battle or going whatever. And they volunteered and said, yeah, I'll do it. To me, that's way different than when I joined. When I joined back in 98, there was nothing going on. It was just, you were joining to try to start a career or something. So I find that to be encouraging, that people would want to say, yeah, send me type thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that, I don't know about you, but me as a senior NCO, I understand this one because, there are, I'm on a staff with a lot of senior officers, and there are unfortunately peers of yours and mine that they're not schmees and they really don't know that much. And then therefore, when you get in a room, they want it to be like all of us are like that, and we're not. And so then they don't want, well, Brian doesn't have a voice because he's an NCO, or Haley doesn't have a voice because he's an NCO. And that feeling that you get from that, it's almost disrespectful. But then what you have to do to develop who you are and define your leadership is don't allow it. Don't allow it. Show them you have a voice. Don't say something, crazy. Yes. Make sure you're speaking the truth. But, I'll tell you, I went to a country. I went to Greece, and in Greece, there's not a lot of, at least I haven't come across a lot of female NCOs. And so everybody kept saying, well, they're not going to want to talk to, your master sergeant because she's a female. And we got down there, and they were talking back and forth with some of the captains and things. And then my master sergeant that was with me, my battle buddy, she chimed in. And then she started speaking like, all kinds of like her plan and her concepts. And they were, next thing you know, gradually you could watch the Greek military leaders start to ask her questions and focus on what she was saying, because she didn't allow herself to be treated like she didn't have a voice by the U.S. side or the Greek side, because we did too, or the Hellenic side. But then once she showed her voice, then it turned into, they weren't talking to the rest of us all that much. They were looking at her as like, oh, this is the Shmee right here. We got the Shmee. So you as an NCO, you as a leader, period, whether it be military or whatever, you have to be able to say, okay, you're going to treat me like I don't have a voice. Let me show you my voice. And then maintain your professionalism and show what kind of NCO you are and what knowledge you have. And once they're taken aback and they get past that, then they're gonna treat you differently. I promise.
Absolutely, yes. And so if we sum all this up for lesson 2, it makes a great point in the last sentence, Ed. And I found myself in the same situation where basically when he wants to analyze all this, he writes, I made notes to ask myself, am I listening and empowering my subordinates? And who is the subject matter expert on the topic? When I think I've said it on the show a few times, when I go into a new organization, I look for those people who are the informal leaders, those people that are knowledgeable in certain areas that I can kind of pull knowledge from them to help make the organization better. You may have somebody who it might not be good, the best runner in the world. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have to do PRT. They still have to be physically fit, but you don't have to be the fastest to be somebody we can go with to get advice from.
Yeah.
So I respect what he said here with that. And I think that definitely the question to be asked was, what have I learned from my leaders, good and bad? And I would say, don't disclude subordinates, peers, all that needs to be in there. So what have I learned from my subordinates, peers, and leaders? Always learning, always. So we're going to move on to number 3, Ed, before we end up closing out this show, because we're only going to do 3 for this episode. And we're going to do the following episode, the following 3. Yeah, because we're 1 hour into this, Ed.
Yeah. So lesson 3, Brian, is assess yourself. And so very important here. So first of all, it says, what are my deficiencies and what can I do to improve them? So these are our questions, right? And then, so this is something, we talk about for us. It should be addressed in our evaluations, right? But everybody knows it's easier to avoid conflict and push the easy button to be complimentary in these evaluations, to not necessarily be honest in these evaluations. And this causes you an issue. Really, yeah, it helps you. Yes, it helps you look like you walk on water. But what it doesn't do is help you assess where you can improve. And so in the article, he talks about that. And then he talks about you need a mentor. So for me, Brian, I know that if we were working together, I could go to you and say, I need an honest assessment. And I could get it from you. But it's these evaluations, you walk on water, and I think he says that in the article. Like, I could just jump out of a boat and just start walking across the water if you look at my evaluations, but that's not helping me to improve. And you as a leader, I challenge leaders to be honest. Like, don't kill anybody's career, but that doesn't deserve it, but be honest, because they cannot get better. And then what happens is then we have the senior leaders that people don't want to look at, like we talked about in the last lesson. They don't want to look to them as the SME because they've been groomed to think they were great and they have all these deficiencies that were never addressed. I don't know why that just cut out.
Yes. Oh, you're fine. I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. GoPro just went. Wah.
He said yes. GoPro got crazy with you?
Yeah, I can't see anything.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. So that's... Thanks, Brian. It means the world to me.
No, I got you, brother. We got your picture up here. Let's see where we go with assessing.
Yep.
I do see your face though. It's a good pose that you're doing there.
Yeah, I see. And, all right. So with assessing, Brian, so what are your thoughts?
So what I wanted to do really, Ed, was I wanted to hit upon something you mentioned earlier. This is before we started the actual recording, because we talk constantly. You brought up what are my deficiencies and what can I do to improve on them. I'll link what you had to say before. Once I say this, is it talks about your evaluation reports, right, and how we get evaluated. And I find that one of the best ways is to allow somebody to write their own evaluation report. And they'll give you something that's just like 1 or 2 lines each block. And you're like, so is this what you think about yourself? Do you feel like you've accomplished things? And, they say, oh, no, I've done stuff. It's just hard to write. Well, you got to learn to generalize. You got to learn to do this. And what I have done also is look at it this way. So what are the areas that you need to work on? How do you make from this evaluation of who you are and what you can do as a leader, how do you improve upon what you want on here? Because everyone wants to be number one. Everyone wants to say that they're the best of the best of the best. And that's why I'm really happy with where we went with the evaluations of only 24% of what the senior rater evaluates can be the top of the top. So you've got the other 76% got to fall into 3 other areas. And to me, it sets people apart. Now I've got to start evaluating, hey, how do I get better? What do I need to do to get better? One of the questions I want to ask you before I kind of jump over to the other area that we talked about with assessing was, when you were being evaluated by Rick Williams, there was some areas that he wanted to, like each NCOR, he wanted to evaluate you guys on a certain specific area, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't it like what you've contributed to yourself, the organization, and the people around you, or something like that? What do you remember exactly what it was?
I don't remember the verbiage, but yeah, he always talked about your impact outside the organization. That was like a big focus, like, you know, and I remember him saying something similar to, you know, the first eval in that position is about your impact in the organization, but your second one needs to show more of an impact outside the organization. So like when we certified other academies to teach the new learning method and stuff, that was, you're impacting outside the organization. So yeah, he was very focused on those different levels.
Okay, yeah, and so that makes sense to me. So where I wanted to take this assessment thing, because we have to constantly be doing assessments on ourselves. What can I do to get better? What can I do to get better? Because we can't stay stagnant, especially where we're going with an Army. It's about get better or time to move on and let somebody else try. You know, you said something earlier about Sarah went to use your particular bathroom that you use all the time. And you are actually using a habit. You're using a habit known by what David Goggins does. He was the Navy SEAL who's now like an ultra marathon runner. He's an endurance athlete, to what he is considered. Can you explain what that is that you're doing?
So in his book, he talks about an accountability mirror, but he also talks about being brutal, honest. Don't put on your accountability mirror, you know, get in shape. That's not, he wants you to be more specific, or, you know, the different language with it. So on mine, I have a few different goals. And then one of my goals, I wanted to trim down a bit. So every time I weigh in every 2 weeks, I write it on my mirror so I can see the weight change. And then, you know, just stuff. And the reason you do it in your mirror is because, like, for me, I shower down here after the gym in the morning before I go to work. So that means I have to see this every day. He suggested using Post-it tags, you know, but for me, I can just use a dry erase marker. And like I said, nobody else really sees it. Sometimes Sarah's just strange like that. And she's just like, I'm going downstairs. So she went down to the man cave, and so she got to see it. But her response was, wow, like I am pumped up. Like that really does motivate me. I said, yes. And now just kind of imagine what it does for me to make me want to develop and be better. You know, and there's all kinds of stuff on there. I'm right now in the middle of doing what's called streak running. So I'm at 28 days straight of running every day, a minimum of a mile. And so I have my little tick marks on my mirror, you know, that I cross off every time I do a run, so I can see how many days I'm at. And so it's just, you really couldn't do much in the mirror, like brush your hair and stuff, because there's so much writing on it. So, yeah. So it's an accountability mirror. Oh, that's a different angle.
Yeah. I know my camera decides it's just like, I don't like that view. So it just changes on me all the time.
Well, mine's still got the politician picture. So.
When I see this view of me, this is what I think. It's mysterious.
Man, you should not have that.
All right. So Ed, we have we covered over the three of the first questions. Those questions being, the first one is, what is other person's perspective? The second one was, what have I learned from my leaders, good and bad? And the third one was, where are my deficiencies and what can I do to improve on them? Assessing oneself, to me, that's critical. And you can add that in so many areas of life. What I'm looking at this with Ed is, these are just 3 questions to start off with. And the next 3 questions that we're going to talk about in the next episode, those are also just something to start off with. You could come up with your own questions when you want. You don't have to go off of these. But what this is to do is to help you kind of define your leadership in a certain way. All right. I don't want to get into the next 3 questions till the next episode. However, I do want to say that using these, it's funny. I look at it as I've kind of been doing some of this stuff already and just didn't know and think about it. But now I'm trying to I want to be more aware of my own leadership styles and leadership. And that whole assess yourself, Ed, that you brought up about the accountability mirror. This comes to, I would say that answers the question for me is what can you learn from someone else? That's something I learned. I actually did listen to the David Goggins book, and I hear you talking about it. And now it's like, hey, maybe that's something I can do and learn about. So I lost you now, Ed, and you're no longer on the show because you disconnected, I think. But that's okay. Where we go with this is, up to you. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and end the show out and pick up the show where we left off of this onto the next one. I don't see Ed. We've lost Ed. He is no longer online. He's considered offline. He's going to probably try to come back on, and then I'm going to end the show as what it is. But I would tell you, hey, listen, those of you listening, think about your leadership style. Think about the type of person that you want to be, but you don't want to just what you want to be. Like, here's this picture. I want to be this. You've actually got to ask these important questions to help gain that new knowledge and gain the information you need to kind of mold your leadership style. And then what you do is you share with subordinates, peers, and even seniors this mentality, the mentality that you want to create to become the leader that you want to become. I would say continue on. Ed's trying to get back on, but that's okay. We'll probably end up stopping this, and then we'll go into the next one before he gets back. I do want to say thank you very much for listening. Hey, listen, there are so many ways to reconnect or just connect with us. First, we have the Facebook page, 101 Influence is where you can find us. You basically type in the search bar on Facebook above, just 101 Influence. And we'll have 2 different pages. We have the actual, there's the closed Facebook group, and then there's the regular one. Just go into the regular one, and then you can try to become a part of the closed Facebook group. It's answering 3 questions. Answer the questions. It's nothing that's overly information giving or anything like that. What it is the questions help us understand our listeners or those people who are part of the group. It's just to help us understand. It's that whole getting your perspective is what we're doing. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on LinkedIn. Those 3 different areas. We try to put stuff on there. Really, most of what we do is it's pushing out what the show is, what the show's about, things like that. I would just, hey, if you've got comments, questions, or concerns with anything, you can always just hit us up, and we have no problems with that. I would also say, hey, check us out on YouTube. On YouTube, when you just go look up Instinctive Influencers, and you won't have a problem at all finding us. This is our 3rd or 4th episode we've done. That's kind of look. Now I'm having issues with the camera wanting to do its own thing. Oh, there we are. So I would say you can leave us comments. You can give us a thumbs up, which we really appreciate. Give us the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. It'll let you know when we have the new episodes. But those in the comments, if you got something you want to say about the episode or maybe a future episode, any of that type of stuff, or a question that you want to ask us, just put it in there. We're going to read those things and we'll get back to you on it. That's not a problem. But with that, I do want to say that I want to thank you all for listening and being a part of the show and just supporting us with this. It's definitely, we got a lot of different things we're going to start doing. But I definitely would tell you that thank you very much. And we're just kind of end the show. Hi, I am Brian. Ed's not with us, but he is Ed. And this has been the Instinctive Influencers podcast. We thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.